Hello, my name is Robotic Device, and today I bring you the Mazda RX-8 mod for Assetto Corsa. Now, if you're anything like me, you love Assetto Corsa, and you've been trying to find one of your favorite cars of all time, the Mazda RX-8, but the mods available just weren't very good. I believe there's only like 3 that I've ever seen. One ripped the engine straight from the Spirit RX-7 that Kunos put out, and it was just nothing like the real thing. Another was the R3 race mod that floats around every now and then, and that actually had the 3-rotor 20B, which was never offered. And I will admit now that the model that you're looking at right now, I didn't actually make. It's from a very outdated mod by D-Spec, Drift Spec, and while the model looks good, albeit the speedometer is not working, it was so outdated that none of the sound works, the physics didn't work, the tires didn't work, just nothing worked on it anymore. And above all else, even if it did work, the mod itself only had 178 newton meters of torque, which just felt awful. The 0 to 60 was something like 9.5 seconds. It was ridiculous. So I tried to mimic the real deal, including my own real RX-8, with a 5.9 to 6 second 0 to 60. That is, of course, if you can get it just right. And what I'll be showing you here today is my progress in making it. I'm going to drive pretty slow because I'm going to have to talk over the engine, but if you want to skip ahead in the video, I'll put an annotation up that will lead you where I actually start giving a demonstration of the car and the physics associated with it. So there are 3 variations of the RX-8 in this mod. The first one is the one you see in front of you and the one I'll be demonstrating in more detail on the Top Gear test track you see here. This is the stock RX-8, which has 223 newton meters of torque and 242 brake horsepower. And basically it is what it is. To me, it feels exactly like my real RX-8, and that is entirely what I was going for. I wanted to be able to use my real car in my favorite racing game, Assetto Corsa, because the physics are amazing, the graphics are amazing, I can use my Oculus Rift, and overall, it's just a good game. The developers are nice, and I've had no real issues with it. The second version is my imagining of a RX-8 that was given twin turbochargers, a lot like the RX-7 was. So it doesn't really have much changed from the stock Renesis 13B you see here, apart from adding the 2 turbos, significantly increasing the power, which 0 to 60 time is certainly affected, 0 to 100 time is really affected. But the main thing is that it just has so much torque now, you actually run out of gear in 5th, and you reach your top speed in 6th at, I believe it is, 169 miles an hour. Whereas in the stock RX-8, again, like real life, you will get up to 155 miles an hour in 5th gear. Good luck doing that. You're going to need a really straight track if you ever want to do that. So the only things that were changed apart from just dropping the engine in were the braking torque was increased by 100 newton meters to help compensate a little bit for all the extra power and speed you'll be going whenever you start to enter a corner, and 35 kilograms of weight, which is about 85 imperial pounds, just to kind of add that weight from the turbos, because of course turbos do weigh something. And that's really the only things different. The transmission's the same, and all of the gear ratios are exact. Because I wanted to feel like it just came straight from Mazda, and most car companies don't offer multiple transmission types unless it's an automatic versus a manual. Speaking of, on the stock Renesis 13B with no turbos, this car right here, if you choose to drive the automatic, you will be sorely disappointed because I tried to make it realistic there too. The automatic RX-8 only has 4 ports on the engine, whereas the manual had 6 ports. And this, coupled with the pretty bad situation with the transmission. In fact, in the Series 1, at least the very early years, it was a 4-speed that was limited to about 7,400 RPM. And that's bad. You lost a ton of power. I think you dropped all the way down to 178 horsepower, which is just awful. It's horrible. But that's how the real car is, and that's what I tried to represent if you choose the automatic option in the menu before you start the game. It will change up at about 6,800 RPM, which is actually higher than the normal automatic RX-8s would go, because the normal automatic RX-8s would change gear way before 7,000, unless you put it in manual mode. So I raised it kind of to even it out just a little bit, but it's still pretty bad when you compare it to the manual. But that's okay. Most people who want to experience this car don't want to experience the automatic. So moving on, the last variation of the car that's included is the R26B variation, which takes its engine directly from the Mazda 787B race car, more specifically Kunos's officially released 787B. So it has, I think it's 608 either horsepower or newton meters of torque, and 4 rotors rather than 2. And as a little fun fact, the reason it's called the 26B is because each of the rotors is representative of 650 cubic centimeters of displacement, probably better known as 0.65 liters, because this is only a 1.3 liter engine stock, and the R26B is 2.6 liters, because it's essentially just 2 more chambers and 2 more rotors slapped onto it, but with some pretty big engine upgrades from Mazda also added on to it. There are no turbochargers. It is the exact same engine that you'd find in Kunos's official 787B. However, you really shouldn't expect the car to be as fast as the 787B. I've changed a lot of things on that one. Most notably is the gearbox. All of the ratios are different to first off account for the fact that the stock RX-8 transmission here just would not be able to handle that power, nor would the clutch. So both of those are upgraded, and the gear ratios are updated so that in 6th gear you can reach 201 miles an hour. It could go faster if you want to lower your final drive gear, and you're welcome to do that in the settings. It's just one of the options for the gears. I believe what it's going to default to is the final gear being 4.144 or 92, something like that. But it was essentially just to be able to get to 200 miles an hour at a reasonably quick speed. A couple of other things that I changed was I dropped the weight of the R26B down about 500 pounds, because all of that extra power with the weight of the RX-8 really just deteriorated the performance to a level that I wasn't comfortable with. And I feel that if somebody were buying the R26B variation of the RX-8, if Mazda were to ever actually put one out, Mazda would probably pull something like with the Mustang GT350R, where they basically just pulled out every single luxury that they could so that it would lose so much weight despite having the same engine. Another notable example might be the newly released 2018 Honda Civic Type R, and I wish I could think of another car that does that, but it's not exactly an uncommon practice. A lot of luxuries and safety equipment, maybe not safety equipment, is just removed in order to compensate for all the extra power and, of course, reduce the weight so that it makes more sense on a track, such as the one we're on right now. But most of my effort went into this one. And the R26B variation actually has a boost in braking torque by another 700 newton meters, because with all of that extra power, you are going to need it. It is definitely a track-ready car. However, again, don't expect it to keep up with the 787B, because it weighs, I think, pretty darn near half of what the RX-8 variation that I made is. But what you can look forward to is the 0 to 60 time on my RX-8 version of the R26B is actually faster because of the gear ratios. The 787B has a really odd first gear that has no power at all In fact, I think it doesn't even reach its idling 2,000 RPM until you're at like 20-something miles an hour, more than. And of course, it's a race-purpose car. You're probably never going to be going that slow on the track, which I tried to make a consumer version of the R26B, which is why I changed the ratios in the first place. But I think I've been talking a little bit too much, so I'm going to go ahead and go around this corner and show off a bit of what the physics are like, and immediately following that you'll see a drag race test of the other two variations of the RX-8 that I've included. The only thing to note is that on the final drag race test, you'll see the R26B variation against the 787B. In the 1,000 meter test, the only difference was 1 second worth of time between the two cars, and I think that's pretty impressive. However, if you were to drop that down to 500 meters, they're almost identical. And again, this is because of those gear ratios I mentioned. It's just not viable to have a first gear that makes no sense in a consumer car, because idling is higher than it will ever be. With that said, I actually did lower the idle on the R26B variation, because again, I was trying to make a consumer version of that car with that engine. So, like I said, I've been talking a bit too much. It's time to show off what I've made. Enjoy.